We're going to start. So welcome everyone. For those of you who regularly attend our monthly interviews, June's interview was the last one of the Sizzle series. We ran that series for 18 months, and today's interview is the first one under the new title, Author Brand Connection. We're going to be speaking today with Carol Scott, PhD, author, speaker, trainer on crowdfunding and the author experience. But before we start, before we welcome Carol, I want to remind everyone of a few logistical details. So the call is being recorded. Yes, I remember to hit record. You will receive a link to the recording tomorrow. And please find your chat button somewhere on your screen. If you move your mouse around either at the top or the bottom of your screen, a little green box with an arrow not the green box, you want the chat bubble with the three little dots. If you have a question anytime during the call, please type those questions into that. And we promise to end the call around 12:45, no later than 1 p.m., so you can get back to the business of your day. So Carol, welcome. Carol Scott, PhD, is an expert in early childhood development and discovered the power of the 7 childhood treasures during her own recovery from years of childhood abuse. She's also recognized that the 7 treasures methodology based on the stages of early child development is beneficial to everyone, not just those with dysfunctional childhoods. She now brings this training to individuals, educators, leaders, and teams in the workplace. Over the past year, we've helped Carol with a complete rebrand, and she's now in the final stages of her book, Just Be Yourself, Your Guide to Improving Any Relationship, which is due out later this month. Thank you, Carol, for being with us today.
Thank you, Cathy. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm excited to hear more about this crowdfunding experience that I've been hearing you talk about. What was your goal in setting up a crowdfunding campaign?
Well, I really had 2 goals. First, I really needed the money. $1,000 for a copy editor, $100 for a proofreader, a few $100s for ISBN numbers, and hundreds of hours of virtual assistance helping set up my marketing database, as well as my contract with Davis Creative. So I really was all adding up, and I knew that there was going to be more financial need for things like printing a first run of books. And so right now I'm covering all of my household expenses by divine grace. So some real actual money coming in was really helpful. So that was the first reason. And then the second goal was I really wanted to build kind of buzz. I wanted to raise buzz about the book, get people excited about the book and the fact that it was coming out. Some of my tribe of followers have literally been waiting for this promised book for more than 10 years.
Wow.
And some people who are newer to my work might not even have known that I was near to finishing a book. So I wanted to kind of bring them all together with a stronger sense of tribalness and being excited about something together.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Now, so how did you decide to go with Kickstarter versus one of the other resources such as GoFundMe, or I know there's lots of others out there?
Well, back in 2016, I researched crowdfunding sites for a CD of original songs that I was working on, and I published at the end of that year in December 2016 as Divine Downloads, available on my website. Little marketing ploy. And what I learned then in my research was that all the crowdfunding sites operate pretty similarly and have similar business models based on a percentage of whatever it is that you raise. However, Kickstarter was the only one that I found that was really devoted to artists and entrepreneurs. So Kickstarter is for inventors and creatives who are planning to deliver or birth a product or a service. And so you won't find anybody raising money to cover recovery from a catastrophic illness or an accident, an injury. So Kickstarter campaigns really are for people who need angel investors, if you will, but only for thousands or maybe tens of thousands of dollars. We aren't the types who have a formal business plan and a need to raise $30 million for a startup company, for startup capital. We're just, raising a few $1,000s for a project. And one thing to be sure that you're clear about Kickstarter is that unless you reach your goal, you don't get any of the funds that have been pledged toward it. Kickstarter does not charge your backers' credit cards until you get to your deadline and you've achieved your goal, those two things.
And then if you don't achieve your goal, do you like regroup and then go back, and are you able to do it again in the near future, or?
Sure. As far as I know, I've been successful both times. So I
Great.
haven't had that experience of going back and starting again, but I don't know why not.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what did you find was the best part about the experience?
Well, it was the love. Oh my God. The love that I felt, the support that I felt, it was just overwhelming from almost 90 backers. And I have fewer than 200 people following my professional author page on Facebook. I don't have a huge tribe following me as an author. And I truly, really felt, though, what I would call transcendent joy pretty much every day of the campaign, as I just sat there and watched the dashboard represent in hard numbers all the love and support that I was feeling. And really, it's kind of still what gets me out of bed on some mornings that I had that experience.
And when you say dashboard, is just Kickstarter itself, that's where you were watching the numbers so you can watch it in real time?
Yep.
Awesome.
There's a menu of tools for the person running the campaign that includes a dashboard that just shows you all the data in graphs and in numbers and how things are going. Every day I just sat there and I would refresh my screen and, oh, look, somebody else pledged. Let's go see who that was.
Somebody loves me. Yeah.
And then the other highlight that I think really deserves an honorable mention is how easy Kickstarter is to use. That was really a fun part of the experience and a good part. It's like they have a lot of tools online to help you have a successful campaign. They really want you to do well. It's very comprehensive support.
That's awesome. Did you encounter any hiccups along the way?
Nothing that I would call big hiccups, but two small ones. First of all, about a quarter of the folks who pledged they opted out of creating an account on Kickstarter when they went to pledge. And so their pledges all came in under names like guest number 2345678.
Wow.
This is a long number. I mean, it was like 8 or 9 digits long.
Wow.
And so Kickstarter also doesn't let you see the email addresses of your backers until you reach your goal and your deadline. So even I reached my goal early, but I still didn't know email addresses until the deadline. So that meant that I didn't know who some of my biggest backers were because of that. I was able to use the Kickstarter system to reply by email to those backers and say, thanks for your gift. I don't know who you are. Please tell me if you'd like. And some of them told me and some of them didn't. And so a late in the campaign pledge of $200,
wow.
I didn't know who it was until I got to the deadline. And so, like I said, I would send thank you notes, but I didn't know who some of the several $100 backers were still guest number something by the time I got to the end. And
so
then
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask, how did you figure out what levels to set your potential contributions at?
Well, it started really with the setting of the goals. So I set the goal at a number that I thought I could achieve, $3,333, rather than what I thought I really needed, which was about $4,500. So my inner guidance system, that little still small voice, told me that's a number that's too big. That's going to scare people off. So then I set 3 backer levels. I thought about how the gifts, the pledges might flow in to fill out 3333 number. And so I named them for 3 of the 7 childhood treasures from my work and called them Trust, Faith, and Vision, $25, $50, and $100. And I really set them in 2 ways. One, thinking about the financial capacity of the people that I was going to be marketing to. Are these the kind of people who can easily give $100? No, but a lot of them can easily give $25. And so that was, and some of them could easily give $100, but not very many. And so I kind of broke the whole figure down into, I bet I could get this many hundreds and this many 50s and this many 25s.
Right.
And then I tried to make the rewards be valuable enough to attract people to the higher dollar back pledges.
Let's
So,
talk a little bit about what those rewards were.
okay. So for $25, just an autographed copy of the book when it comes out. And the book will probably retail for 18 to 22, I'm thinking, somewhere in there. We don't know yet. So $25, you're not, you spend a little extra for a book and you're getting my signature, whatever that's worth. $50, the autographed book, and then also a PDF copy of my chapter from the anthology Living an Energized Life, which was published last fall, and a copy of my CD, Divine Download. And then at the $100 vision level, I offered two autographs. Oh, and an invitation, I'm sorry, for the $50 level, an invitation to an online book launch, something like this in a Zoom class. So at the $100 level, 2 autographed books, one autographed to you and one autographed to a person of your choice, and an invitation to an in-person book launch to be held in St. Louis, and it'll also be a bon voyage for my book tour. And people have to pay, it's at their expense to travel to St. Louis if they don't live here. And then on top of that, either their choice of either a registration in one of my online classes, which will start in 2019, or a free 45-minute consultation to talk about the 7 childhood treasures in one of their relationships.
Make sure everybody's muted now. We're all good.
And I didn't add the CD or the PDF to the $100 level because I thought that a lot of those people already would have the CD and have the anthology, frankly.
Right. So how often, I know you said part of your goal was to create that relationship with the people that you were reaching out to, even though you felt in the beginning that it was a limited list. How did you reach out, and how often did you reach out to those potential backers?
I reached out every single day, and sometimes more than once every day, but not in the same channel, not more than once in the same channel every day. And my heaviest outreach was to my personal Facebook friends. So I mentioned that I only have 199. I still can't quite get to 200 on my author page, but on my personal Facebook page, I have almost 600 friends, and most of them are people that I actually know personally. So that was my primary audience every day to them.
That's awesome.
And my messaging revolved around 5 intentions. The first intention was to generate shared excitement and shared commitment to the project of the book. I always talked about how we are doing this together. I never took credit for the campaign. It was something we were doing as a group of people. And so if I use the word I in my messaging, it was to talk about how I felt about the fact that we were doing this together and it was doing so well. My second intention was to create excitement about and interest in the content of the book. And I mostly did that with my video on Kickstarter. They have tools that let you create a little video to introduce your project, and in the narrative that was posted on Kickstarter. And then I emphasized that in some of my posts by tying back to the 7 childhood treasures sometimes in my messaging. My third intention was to be humbly and authentically grateful all the time and over and over and over again. And so I did say thank you.
That definitely came across in your messaging, because I was mostly aware of your Facebook posts. Yeah.
And I often thanked people within minutes because I had the dashboard open all the time and was checking it all the time. People got thank you messages through Kickstarter within minutes of their pledges most of the time, and certainly within hours. And so then in addition to that, I said thank you a lot in my Facebook messages, and I wrote about things like how scary it is to trust people with something that's so important to me, and was vulnerable and very authentic in my emotional connection around my gratitude. I talked about not just my joy, but about my tears and my fears as well. And then my fourth intention was to have fun. And so I used colorful memes. I used stock photos of children or of other images that went with the message, like fireworks when I announced that we hit the goal a whole week ahead of the deadline. and kind of just made them more kind of fun instead of just words. And then my fifth intention was to keep the focus on the ROI, on the return on investment, that this is an investment. And so I used exclusively in my messaging the language of backers, pledges, and investing, never donors, donations, or gifts.
Right.
I was always focused on the business. So you were
Sounds
never
like an awesome marketing plan that you put together there.
Thank you. I just want to mention, in addition to my Facebook friends, I also did send a much smaller number of similar messages to my pro page on Facebook, to my LinkedIn account, and to my very baby small group of followers on Instagram. And I sent a couple of MailChimp emails to that group of people, which is, again, it's about 200 people on my MailChimp list. And finally, I made, well, not finally, but I made a flyer and took it to my spiritual community and handed it out individually to people who are not on Facebook and might have been missing the fact that I was doing it, but who I thought might be interested in supporting me. And I sent a few text messages, a very small number of text messages to some very close people when we got down to the last week. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing I never, ever did is I never guilt tripped or emotionally manipulated people about giving. I never said, or vague booked, you know, something like, why aren't you giving? You're my best friend, my sister, my richest person I know. You know, I never did that.
Yeah. Well, and you're creating community as you're building that community and you're building your following. Yeah. And guilt never works when you do that. No. So what kind of responses did you get from the people that you were reaching?
It was amazing. I mean, first of all, lots of people who weren't pledging were commenting on the posts and saying, way to go, congratulations, glad it's going. I mean, I was getting encouragement in lots of ways other than backers. And that was really sweet. And really what I found is that people are so very generous if you just let them be generous. If you just give them an open-hearted invitation and allow them to be open-hearted, it's amazing. So the first pledge literally came within minutes of my first Facebook post announcing the campaign. On July 4th, started on Independence Day for a very, you know, metaphoric and symbolic reason.
Right.
That's a good idea. And not one day went by without at least one pledge all the way through July 24th. So for that many days, from the 4th of July to the 24th of July, which was 3 days before the deadline. And in fact, even through the very final pledge, a full week after we hit the goal, mind you, there were only 3 days out of the entire 25-day campaign where there was not one pledge.
Now, does Kickstarter dictate how long the campaign is, or do you do that?
I do. Yep. I'm going to talk about that too, about how to think about that. And I wanted to just highlight a couple of the ways that the kinds of people that responded in the ways that they responded. So the very first pledge was from a childhood friend, actually a friend of my younger sister's, who I knew when we were children, but we weren't close. And she just recently became my Facebook friend last year during my mom's hospice time. And she was the first person. She's a therapist, and she's become a big fan of the work as much as she knows about it. And then the first person to pledge 100 or more, actually, because his pledge was higher, came from a guy who I've known for a very, very long time, but I'm not particularly close to, and I had had almost no contact with him over the past 10 years. I wouldn't have expected him to pledge at all, and he pledged 150, higher than my highest category. So, and then 2 years, two friends who are absolutely beset for 2 years now with like financial, medical, legal problems, managed, they sometimes barely have 2 nickels to rub together, and they managed to pledge $25.
That's awesome.
So, you know, the love and the faith and the support just came from all directions and relatively unexpected sometimes.
That's awesome. It makes all of it worth it, all the effort that you put into it. Yeah. Did you ever worry that no one would respond?
Yes, 2 times. I worried twice. Right as I hit the enter button on my keyboard to send that very first Facebook post to announce the campaign, I had that moment of, oh my God, what if I give this party and nobody comes? And then my second moment of doubt was a lot bigger because I just said, and hit enter when I felt that.
Right.
But when we were a week out from the goal, we were still more than $300 away from the goal. We were 1 week out from the deadline. And I thought when I saw that on that Saturday morning, these are going to be the hardest dollars to raise, these last 330, whatever it was, dollars. But I was completely wrong about that. So what I did was I wrote my first sort of worried language post to Facebook saying that I thought that those were going to be the hardest dollars to raise and why. And then I sent those text messages, just 3 text messages to 2 family members and a really, really close friend, any of whom I thought could pledge $100 and kick me way up toward that 300.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was my brother, next oldest up in the line of 5 of us. And before I even got responses to the other 2 texts, he logged in and pledged the remaining balance, all of it.
Oh my gosh.
And so there I was.
Gave me goosebumps. That gave me
I was at goal a full week before the deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I got goosebumps with that one.
Me too.
So overall, what was the outcome? I know you reached your goal.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you tell us about that?
So I put some numbers together here on my notes so that I wouldn't have to try to remember all these figures. And I want you to know I did keep messaging, as I said, after we reached the dollar goal. And I told people, this is so great because I set my goal lower than my need. So if you haven't pledged yet and you still want to, all your money will be used exactly for the purpose of publishing this book. So people continued to pledge all the way up till the very night of the deadline. Mm-hmm. There were 82 backers through Kickstarter, and they funded 133% of that $3,333 goal for a total of $4,442 pledged. And the odd number is because I asked people to add postage if they needed me to ship their books. In addition, 4 individual backers handed or mailed me cash or checks totaling another $380. So after Kickstarter deducted its fees, I received a direct deposit of $4,030.67, which is almost 91% of what was raised online. Mm-hmm. And so adding the cash in hand from the people who mailed checks or handed me money gave me a total net of $4,410.67.
That's awesome.
Remember me saying that my real need was $4,500? Mm-hmm. So setting my goal at $3,333 got me within $90 of that $4,500 real goal. And so I would call that a huge success.
That's awesome.
And I would say that the best outcome was that I was able to pay the balance I owed my copy editor and hire a proofreader.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's awesome. So overall, and looking back on the experience, one, would you do it again? And are there any other tips that you could share with our listeners today about crowdfunding?
I would absolutely do it again. It was both times, both for the CD and for this book, were brilliant experiences of trusting the universe and feeling the love. And I love to do that. So I'd do it again. And for tips, 7 childhood treasures, I came up with 7 if we have time for them. I think we do.
Yeah, we do. We're good.
So unless you're trying to raise a lot of money, like tens of thousands of dollars, and you're pitching to strangers, just ignore all the emails that you'll start getting as soon as you set up your campaign from people who sell their services to Kickstarter campaign drivers like me. And what they're going to do is try to sell you access to thousands of strangers who might like your project. So, and they're going to sell that to you. That's not a gift from Kickstarter. So,
right.
You just don't answer their emails. You get them through the Kickstarter campaign. They email you through the Kickstarter campaign. I would say if you're raising under $5,000, just go to the people you know. Go to the people who already love you and care about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And the second is to be realistic about your goal, because there is the goal of how much you need and the real things you're going to spend it on. And then there is the number that you think you can raise from the people that are helping you. And so who would want to invest in you. So, I said, I have almost 600 Facebook friends, and 83 of them pledged in this campaign, either through Kickstarter or some of those were people who handed me money. And that is 14% of that 600 people.
Wow.
So, you know, if you can, I think a lot of marketing wisdom says, you know, you might get 10% of people to respond to a campaign of this intensity. And so what's the number you're starting with? What's the number of people likely to pledge? How much do those people have is I think part of it. But when you build your budget, you also need to think realistically about your expenses. Like Kickstarter is going to take 9 to 10% of your amount that you raise. And do you have expenses? So like I said, I added $2 shipping for books that I was going to have to mail. And I added $4 shipping if you live in Mexico or Canada, because I have friends in both of those places. So you need to, and I included food and beverage costs for the face-to-face book launch as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
The third tip is use all the marketing channels you have, because if you're like me, there's a lot of overlap. There's the personal Facebook people, and then there's the professional Facebook people, and they're in both. And then there's the people on LinkedIn, and some of those are in both of the other two, and the MailChimp. So that means that the people who are most committed to me saw the most messages. They got it in the most channels. And that's the best kind of marketing, is when you see the message over and over again in different places. So that was an important thing, I think. And then fourth, don't let people forget for one day of your campaign that it's happening, that it's going on. Even right up until when we hit the goal. I mean, literally the deadline was 11:59 p.m., so 1 minute before midnight on a Friday night. I went to bed at 10:30 and I messaged the last thing before I went to bed and the first thing when I got up on Saturday morning. So everybody who'd been harangued by me for 25 days in every possible channel got to celebrate with me on Saturday morning of how much the final amount was. And you know what? There was one last pledge between when I went to bed and when I got up.
Wow, that's awesome.
My fifth tip is about making your campaign period long enough to let yourself raise the investment that you need. If you go too short, then all your procrastinators will not ever get around to it. So you need to give people time to hear it over and over again, because some people like me are going to be the kind of people who say, oh, cool, she's doing that. I'll give next time I see that I'm busy now. Next time a message comes up, I'll give, which is why I messaged every single day, because I knew that not everybody sees every Facebook post, and I messaged at different times of day and just kept it up. Like I said, I felt like I was haranguing people. So you have to make it long enough, but you don't want to drag it out for months. You don't want to make it so long that you and your audience are in complete fatigue with the message. And so you just have to think about how much you're trying to raise and how fast you think you can raise it. And then the sixth tip is keep your backers updated. Kickstarter makes this really easy. They have a built-in, because you don't know their email addresses yet, they have a built-in system. You write your updates. It's like a little article on LinkedIn is kind of the way it looks. It publishes similarly. You write your updates and just hit send, and they go to everybody who's pledged. And so I sent 5 updates during the course of the campaign. So roughly every 4 or 5 days, I was sending an update to the people who had backed to say where we were in the campaign and to give them a special private sort of behind the scenes look
that's
on
awesome.
what I was saying on Facebook. And then I sent a 6th one the morning after the campaign deadline so that they would know how it all came out. And I've sent one since then to update them about the book moving from copy editing into design and layout. And I'll probably send 1 or 2 more between now and then also surveys. So Kickstarter lets you survey your backers in the categories that they pledge. So I can send 1 survey to all of the $25 backers saying, now tell me your mailing address where I'm going to send your book. And I can send a different survey to the $50 backers saying, I'm looking at 3 different dates for the online book launch. Are there any of these you can't make? And what's your address for the book? And whatever else I need to know. And to $100 people, I can send a different survey to get the information that I need from them. And Kickstarter really makes those surveys totally easy peasy. So my last tip, my 7th tip, is be brave. You can do this. You just really need 3 things. You need a lot of friends. You need a lot of people who care about you. or a lot of people in your tribe who are following your work, and a reasonable goal. But most important of all, you just need to believe in yourself.
I think that's awesome. So what I hear is that you have this lovely tribe who has been supporting you for years in terms of encouragement and motivation. So tell us a little bit more about what is it that you've written about, and what have they been waiting to hear for these many years that we're almost ready to publish?
Okay. So in 2004 and 2005, I had the opportunity to offer an online class called Healing Beyond Our Wounds as part of the Diana's Grove Mystery School. And the class format required me to write a packet of of narrative material to read and study questions each month for 22 months, with a break of 1 month in the middle after 11 months. And then I interacted with my class participants on a listserv, which is email. So I wrote a lot more in the emails. And that was really the beginning, the developmental do-over activities that I offer in my book, and the language that I use to talk about child development and its impact on adults really started as those classes. And so then the next year in 2006, I started writing the book. And I started compiling all of that class material into a book. And then in 2008, I got a really demanding full-time job. And so I went from being a consultant with more flexible time to being a CEO of a nonprofit with no flexible time. And so for a long time, the book went very, very slowly. It moved forward, but it didn't move very quickly. And then it was about 80% finished, I would say, in 2014, when I had an epiphany and I threw the whole thing out and started over. So in 2014, I started rewriting because my understanding of the material had evolved. My voice had evolved. My way of teaching it to other people through practice, I had evolved that as well. And I just needed to start over again. So that book, the one that I started writing in 2014, is the one that we're publishing now in 2018.
And I know I've heard a lot about the 7 treasures, but tell us a little bit about how this book reflects upon those 7 treasures, and what are the 7 treasures, and how did that come about?
So the 7 childhood treasures are social and emotional assets of personality. And these are gemstones that enrich our relationships when we're adults, but our opportunity to obtain them, if you will, is from birth to 7 years of age. And most parents don't know that they're in a dance with their children who are trying to evolve these 7 assets. And there's not a lot of help for parents to be the kind of parents that optimize this social and emotional development. And so I will name them: trust, which you sort of gather in your emotional toolkit at the age of about 6 months. So it's your first year gemstone is trust. Independence is the treasure of the toddler, the ability to know who you are and be in relationship with other people without being codependent. Mm-hmm. The third treasure for the 3-year-old is faith, and it's just the ability to believe in belief, basically. Faith is what ran the Kickstarter campaign. It's the ability to believe in something beyond what I can see. Then negotiation for the 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. Learning how to create win-win solutions with people in your life by getting what you want, but respecting what other people want as well. Mm-hmm. 5th is vision, which is sort of, 5-year-olds are the little strategic planners of the childhood world. It's all about having a goal and creating a plan and working out the mechanics of things is what you learn how to do when you're 5. And then at 6, the treasure is compromise. So that ability to know what you want at 2 and the ability to negotiate win-win solutions at 4 turns into this, it sort of blossoms into this much more complex capacity for getting along in bigger groups where there are multiple people with multiple needs, not just 2 people, each one with something they're trying to get. And then at 7, the final treasure I call acceptance. And it is the ability to let go of the things that are hard and that might be roadblocks in your life. So acceptance is release and surrender to what is rather than fighting with what's happening all the time. And those really came out of the intersection of my knowledge and education and kind of career skills in
Mm-hmm.
child development and early education, and my own recovery from early childhood trauma. What I learned was I didn't develop any of those. I didn't find any of those treasures between birth and 7. I had to recreate that developmental pathway for myself in my 30s and 40s and 50s. And so that's what I do with my work, is help people with developmental do-overs to get the treasures that they missed when they were children. And I do that so that they'll be nicer to children. I want adults who are better with kids, and the way to do that is to fix what they missed.
Right. No, I completely see that. So how did you decide, with all your background and your education, how did you just wake up one morning and say, I want to be an author?
You know, it kind of came into my life as compellingly and seemingly randomly as my interest in child development and my study of it. I think I've always just innately been an author. I was thinking about this question and remembering that when I was a kid, you know that question that adults always ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a lot of really kind of out of the box answers for that when I was a child. I was kind of a smarty pants, brainiac, precocious kid. And so I liked to confound adults with my answers. And when I was about 6 or 7, I was actually answering that question with, I'm going to write the great American novel.
Wow.
So even at that age, I thought of myself as a writer. My mom was a high school language arts teacher for most of my childhood. And so she gave me a lot of writing skills early. And then I had a couple of other really gifted writing teachers in high school. Mrs. Boyce was a terrific encourager and nurturer of my writing. And in graduate school, there was a whole class that was just to help us budding professionals learn how to express ourselves in the written word better than most professionals do with long sentences that don't mean much.
Yeah, I can always tell where, before I even know someone's credentials, I can usually tell by the way they have written something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait a minute. Let me go see how much education you have. And then I can tell.
But I just always wrote. I wrote a book in junior high with some friends. I wrote a play in high school with a friend as a class assignment. I wrote really bad poetry in high school and college. And then I started writing professionally. I had to write essays and research articles and articles for popular parenting magazines and things like that. So it's just always been part of who I am.
So as you moved into the author world, what have you found as to be the most difficult part about writing a book?
You know, it's really finding the words that let other people understand what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I can write beautiful prose sentences that are layers deep in meaning and really make me happy, and they don't mean anything to anybody but me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to make sure that I'm speaking in a voice that speaks to the people I'm speaking to and not to me. That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. So the other side of that coin is what's been the most fun?
The moments when I make child development sound like beautiful poetry. When I write a sentence that brings tears to my eyes because it captures the truth of who a child is so completely and so beautifully that it gives me chills, those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as you've been walking through this process with us, when did it start to feel real that you were actually going to have a book in your hands and you saw the light at the end of the tunnel?
When you sent me the 3 sample book covers.
Yeah.
The book wasn't even out of copy editing yet, but I needed a book cover for my Kickstarter campaign. And so you created one. And when I saw those 3 samples, I said, man, stuff is getting real. Okay, I didn't say stuff, but let's say that I did.
Yeah.
Stuff is getting real here. Yeah. That's when it felt like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
So would you write another book?
Actually, I already started the next one. So I have a good start on this one, and I actually hope to publish it before 2019 is over. heads up, Cathy.
Yeah.
Its working title is Sparkle Kids, Every Parent's and Teacher's Guide to Young Children Who Shine.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So I hear you have a special offer for our audience today. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I have a mini poster of what I'm calling the 7 Childhood Treasures Manifesto of what we should be rightly able to expect in our lives, relationships, and well-being based on those 7 years. So a little mini poster of that, and then either you can do either a video chat, a phone chat, or some other way of connecting with me. In person is fine if you're in St. Louis, for a 45-minute consultation on the role of the childhood treasures in a relationship in your life. And after the call, Cathy, you'll send out a link to sign up for the poster. And after you do that, then I'll have your email address and I will contact you to set up the consultation.
That's great. Yeah, we'll have how to get hold of Carol and how to sign up for her free download and how to access this recording if you want to listen to it again or for the first time in an email tomorrow morning. So do you have any upcoming workshops or training on the calendar? I know you do a lot of workshops.
I do, and I have September 16th is kind of a bonanza. If you live in the St. Louis area, at least, you can join me. I'm the guest speaker for the inspirational address in the Sunday celebration at the Center for Spiritual Living in Creve Coeur, home to love and joy. And really, even those of you who are out of town, you can watch that service. It's live streamed. So you go to the Center for Spiritual Living St. Louis website at 11 o'clock in the morning on September 16th. You can watch the whole service, including my 20-minute keynote.
And actually, we could include that link in our email tomorrow.
Great.
Yes, we could do that.
The service starts at 11 and ends at noon. If you want to stick around and enjoy some fellowship over a buffet for a bit, then at 12:30, I'll be premiering the video of my TEDx talk, Never Lost Forever, on the lost art of dreaming the big dreams in life. And then for those who want even more, there's a 3-hour workshop following the video premiere. Changing Your Thinking for Better Relationships is an introduction to the 7 childhood treasures and kind of an in-depth dive into trust and independence, which are the foundation for a really healthy personality. Registration for that session is $35 online or in the CSL bookstore before 1 o'clock on the day of the workshop. And on top of all that, I believe it's true that I'll be selling my book, Just Be Yourself, in public for the first time at those events.
Yes. We were discussing that this morning, so we're moving in that direction, definitely.
Yay.
Yeah. So I want to remind everybody again that if you do have any questions, now's the time to drop them into the chat room. Cindy, I think we covered your question. Yeah, I see a shaking head there. That's awesome. Thank you. I didn't see any questions pop up, but Carol, I sincerely want to thank you for taking the time to be here today and share that information, not only about your crowdfunding, but about your faith and your philosophy and your 7 childhood treasures. I do want to thank everyone else also for being with us again today, and be watching tomorrow for our follow-up email with Carol's information and contact information. And our next webcast, mark your calendar, September 27th. We'll be talking with Amy Collins, and she's an expert for nonfiction authors on helping your books to be seen online and get them into libraries. I was trying to get all that in before the cough. Sorry about that. So I want to thank everyone. I cannot sing as well as Carol. Otherwise, I would sing the next phrase of see you in September. So I do hope to see everybody then in September. Thank you again, Carol, for being here.
You're welcome, Cathy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.